Hey everyone, it's Scorpius and welcome back to the channel. Ziz had an interview with a lot of very good information. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to go over their interview, simplify everything for you guys. And then after this part, we have some new things coming out either today or tomorrow that they reported over the past couple of days. And some of the things that Ziz actually spoke with them about, they are about to implement them. And this time, this update is a big deal for us because they're buffing so many different things. And number one here, they had a conversation about the pacing. Again, they believe that it's okay, but we'll keep doing changes until the players are happy. That's the overall thing there. Ziz also asked them, how do you guys feel about how much time you need to finish through the campaign? And they said that they don't actually think about time when they're thinking about it. They're thinking about how fun is the content, because if you're doing the whole campaign and it's not actually fun, you start thinking about, wait, I'm wasting my time, how much time does it take, rather than if it's fun, then you don't care. That's the way that they think. Next, we've got the movement speed for players. Ziz was trying to fish and see if there's any abilities that they're planning to give us. They said not against it, but they need to find a way to not break the player versus monster dynamic. What I mean by the player monster dynamic is they understand now that the monsters are very fast, and we've seen a lot of nerfs to the monsters and bosses. We're going to see them later on, but if the monsters are too slow, then you as a player, you have always the option to just move past them and go about your day. They don't want that to happen. They have some options in mind, but don't like the movement ability solution. Then they said that they're actually working on a UI rework right now, which is very exciting to hear and see what they're going to do. It's going to come out soon, and it's a big priority to them. Also might add the buff and debuff at the bottom for PC as well, or at least give us the option for us to put it at the bottom in case we need it instead of the top left, just like the console players have it. Next, they spoke a little bit about loot drops. Ziz was saying, and very correctly, that we're not getting a lot of socketable gear on the floor, and the currency is a little bit low for us to be able to put the sockets on the gear. They said they're gonna increase the drops of artificer orbs in the early stages of the campaign, and this is one of the pointers that they are actually implementing. We're gonna get it in the next update, which is good news. They will add sockets to caster weapons as well and create new runes specifically for them, which is another thing that we're getting today or tomorrow, which is again very exciting. We're gonna see all of these things down below. They're gonna add rune options early on in the campaign, and they were told that exalted orbs, a lot of players report that they drop a lot easier in Act 1 than the rest of them. They didn't know about this. They don't know if that's true or not, so they're gonna investigate and see what happens, but if that's the case, they're gonna fix it. Next topic of discussion was about resistances in general. They said they're gonna reevaluate the tree, the passive tree that we have, and they will also reevaluate the resistances on the runes, because Mark, one of the developers of PoE 2, said that he doesn't believe that the elemental resistances that we get from the runes is good enough. So they're probably going to get some buff. So that's good. Next, the stun and ailment threshold. They spoke about that, and they said stunning will occur more when you progress in the game. So the more progress you have in the campaign, and especially in the end game, that's when you're going to start feeling the stunning a little bit more, not so much at the early levels in the early campaign. Ailments, however, have been buffed during the campaign, which they said that it doesn't really match the way that the slots of the charms work, because you're supposed to get frozen more often and ignited and bled and poison and all that stuff. So they said that they're gonna add eventually in the future up to 6 slots that we're gonna be able to get from unique items, which is a good thing, and give us more options for slots overall, and charms are gonna be buffed in the near future. Next, they spoke about the passive tree in general. Ziz, because he's a very big Path of Exiles 1 veteran, he was asking if they're gonna implement masteries onto the skill tree. For anybody who doesn't know, masteries are another layer into your passive skill tree. So you know, you've got like your ascendancy, you've got your passive nodes, the small ones, then the bigger ones, the notables, and masteries is something that you get a notable and you unlock a hidden branch of the tree that you can put more points in that increases something, right? That makes you more powerful. They said that they don't want to introduce that to PoE 2 because they want in PoE 2 to keep notables as simple as possible and make them even more overpowered, which is why they said that they're going to constantly look on how they can improve the notables. So that's the answer there. And also they spoke about gold and how much the gold costs us to respec our stuff. They said that they don't think it's a problem, but they need to investigate other stuff deeper than that, because it's very easy to say, okay, it costs a lot, let's nerf it. But again, they need to look at how do people play the game, what do we spend our gold on. So if we have a problem with loot drops during the campaign, we're gonna gamble more. If we gamble more, we have less gold. If we have less gold, we now suddenly have an issue with respecking. So it's not really how much respecking costs, but what else can they do to improve the gold value and how we spend it. So that's what they mean by investigating there, which I think is a really good mindset. Then we have the Ascendancy respec was brought up once again. There are no updates, but I can say for sure that if we mention to them 1 or 2 more times about the Ascendancy respec, we're gonna get it, because it seems that Mark is more convinced now. Everybody has asked them about this. I think the whole community wants it, so I think we're gonna get it sooner rather than later. They spoke about something very interesting, talking about how offense is greater than defense, and because defense scales terribly in the game, you cannot invest a lot of currency to become immortal, but you can invest a lot of currency into being insanely strong to the point where you one-shot uber bosses. And we're having a little bit of a discussion there. They said offense is more fun and easier to invest into than defense, which is an obvious statement. However, rebalancing this would be insanely hard for them, they said, because they need to change the way that they speculate everything and the way that they write things that are going into the game and balancing. But they said they're going to be on the lookout and see what they can do. But this question was mostly for hardcore. Armor break 2 players definitely has a lot of errors and will be improved, and I'm happy to say that this improvement will be implemented in the patch. We're going to see in a second the details. Then speaking about armor in general, they're willing to do changes, but they need to understand what's the problem. Then talking about pushing, another point that they already covered in the update and they fixed it. Removing it is not an option, as they said, and they are not planning on giving us any mitigations like push mitigations that you can have on charms or stuff like that. However, they will be nerfing a lot of the monsters that do the pushing, the extensive pushing where they take us for a ride kind of thing, and they already did that, so we're going to see that in a second. Divine Orb for crafting is pretty weak, so they're going to look into that as well. Unique and item scaling, Ziz had a really cool point where he said, imagine a world where we're playing Path of Exiles 2 and your gear scales with your level, or at least the unique, and the example with Lifesprig. They don't like this idea per se because it's going to cause us to use less items if everything scales with us, and the people who have a lot of currency can craft something insane at level 20 and then just keep it to endgame because it's going to scale with them. So I mean, that's going to affect the markets as well, etc, etc. Minion resurrect timer, that's also something implementing now. Instead of resetting the timer when a minion dies, now they changed it to where the minion will add time to the timer instead of resetting the whole thing, which is a good thing for minion builds. Endgame backtracking, maybe showing the rares from the start will be the solution for it. They said it, and boy, they did it. Delirium speed will need to be nerfed, but it needs to be investigated. Gem tabs is the other very interesting conversation that they had, where this arose from different classes playing with different abilities from their class fantasy, I would say. And what they said the solution is to have the skill tab where it's going to have all gems and then equip gems, so you can quickly find the equipped instead of having to type something else which is not in your class tab. So that's a good change. Then for the charges, thinking of creating a support gem that gives something but stops the ability from using charges, which is something that we're getting in the new patch. Corrupted drops, they will make them better, potentially adding quality and sockets to all items that drop as corrupted items, which I think again is a very good change, because what's the point of getting a decent corrupted item and not being able to do absolutely anything to it? So we'll see. Tabs, again, they are fixing this with new stash tabs and affinities. We're getting affinities now in this new patch drop, but we're not getting stash tabs. They're still working on them. And lastly, in the interview, they spoke about Fog of War endgame. They said they're going to improve the Fog of War visibility and how we actually find things. That's basically the interview with Ziz. I'm going to have a link below if you guys want to watch the full thing. He did an amazing job. So if you want to watch the whole thing, I'm going to have a link below. And now let's move on to the cool stuff. First, good news for us. A lot of monsters are being nerfed. First of all, human monsters, not all of them, usually interrupt their swings to hit with another ability. This has been fixed to give us time to react. Prowlers and other fast monsters will now walk towards us and only run when there's a certain distance between us. Generally, faster monsters are now weaker, either damage-wise or life-wise. Red Veil will have less bloom serpents. Hunting Grounds will have less crabs. Blood pools, you know those little babies that explode? Blood pools have reduced duration. Less density in Ogham Manor. Boars and chargers will push you to the side instead of taking you for a ride. Lost City and Azak Bog will have less ranged and elite monsters. Matland Waterways, for anybody who doesn't know where this is you know the area that is split with like water and you need to pull the levers and everything. They're going to improve the whole map so we don't need to use too many levers. And lastly here, we will now see all rares from the beginning on our endgame maps. So no longer do we need to kill 50% or 60% of the monsters to see where the rares are. We're going to be able to see them from the beginning so we don't skip one and then backtrack. Next, we have a couple of bosses that are nerfed. We've got Viper Napuatsi, the Act 3 boss with the bodyguards. Now she's going to have smaller and less chaos rings on the ground. Uxmal, which is the Trial of Chaos, the Dragon, Chimera, whatever you want to call it, now is going to fly off less times, which is good. It cannot recharge energy shield in the air, and the flame breath will be used less often. Next up, we've got a couple of minion changes for anybody who cares about minions. Revive timers, as we said before, instead of resetting the timer when each minion dies, it will now simply increase the timer by less and less. Then disenchanting a specter or a tame beast gem will give us the gem back so we can reuse it. And fixed issues with the tame beasts where they couldn't fit through gaps. So now they said that your tame beast is gonna always be able to fit through the gaps that your character can fit through. And now let's go to the good stuff, the player buffs. Rally support has been buffed. It now supports all melee attacks. Glory is also buffed. It's no longer consumed when you're interrupted while using a skill. Blood Boil, this is very important for all the ritualists that stop playing ritualists because of this. Blood Boil can now propagate when you're using Herald of Blood, so now you can stack it with Herald of Blood. Arc has been slightly reworked, but I do believe this is a big buff. It now causes lightning explosion when hitting a shocked enemy, but no longer shocks or consumes shock. Eye of Winter has been buffed, gains bonus elemental damage when going through other elemental orbs. Incinerate has been significantly buffed. Its exposure duration increased from 2 to 8 seconds. Mana Tempest, it now works with all spells and causes empowered spells to split to additional targets instead of chaining or forking. Frostbolt Radius increased by 50%. Which is a big buff here. Ice Nova's freeze buildup has been increased. Frostbomb exposure duration increased from 5 to 8 seconds. Mana Remnants have been buffed to now work with all other elemental elements. Ignite spreading delay has been decreased from 2 to 1 second, which is a positive change because now Ignite is going to spread faster. CI, Chaos Inoculation, has been buffed to get to the logical standards of what it does, so now it prevents bleeding as well. The stun threshold passive cluster around the CI area as well has been massively buffed, as it now also increases ailment threshold, not only stun threshold. Parried enemies can no longer evade. Energy Shield no longer prevents bleeding. So for all the bleeding builds out there, we no longer have Energy Shield as our kryptonite. So that's good. Rapid Assault has been massively buffed. Explosion always bleeds. AoE damage increased by 20%, and the detonation damage increased by 67%. Spear Field ability has also been buffed. The spear duration increased and damage increased by 30%. Herald of Blood has been fixed. No longer deletes the corpses from rares and uniques, so we can use Ritual Sacrifice. Temporal Weapon of the Smith of Kitava now adds 3 empowerments per strike and is 25% faster. Shield Wall can now detonate with War Cries. Armor Break on players no longer applies 20% extra physical damage to us, and duration of it is reduced from 12 seconds to 4 seconds. The Stormcaller Arrow now chains shocks to nearby enemies, and its radius increased by 50%, which is not a bad thing. Lightning Rod damage increased by 30%, duration increased by 20%. The Lightning Arrow radius of arc increased by 50%, and Tornado Shot's max duration increased to 15 seconds. The charges issue that they spoke about in the interview now has a fix. As they said, they're adding a brand new support gem that prevents charges being used from that specific ability, and it also increases that specific ability's damage by 4% for each type of charge that they have. However, they recently updated this change and they said that it's a lot harder to implement the 4% damage of each type of charge that you have, but they're going to roll the gem without that stat. So we're going to see maybe it's just going to be 4% flat damage increase. Also, the support gem's name is going to be Inhibitor. So look out for that one. Next, we have some crafting changes. Caster weapons can now include sockets. Perfect. New set of modifiers added for caster weapons on all runes, so expect more runes that you can find for caster weapons specifically. And as they said, they increase the number of artificer orbs that we get early on in the campaign. So all of these things that I just mentioned are things that are going to be rolling into the game in patch 0.2.0e, which is going to happen today or tomorrow. But they also mention a couple of things that they're currently working on, and they're expecting they're going to be live by next week. And it's big changes as well. So new additions to next week's update. Charms. Charm slots on belts are now given by implicit mods that vary based on the level of the belt. So one charm slot can be found to belts up to level 32, 2 charm slots up to level 64, and 3 65 plus. Divine orbs can re-roll the number of slots, but I don't think you're going to be using your divines for that. Next, unique belts can always have up to 3. Doesn't mean that it's always going to be 3, it's up to 3, but always up to 3. And later on they said they're going to provide more than 3. All charms that were supposed to protect us from the hit that activated them will now do that. So they weren't working 100% as they had to, and now they will. And also they have completely buffed all the charms overall. They didn't provide any more information. Maybe we're going to check the patch notes later on or next week, and we'll cover those as well, but major buffs on charms. Next, they spoke about tab affinities. They're giving us the tab affinities right now because, as Mark said, they're currently in design for new stash tabs that they want to release. And by the time that they finish with all of that, because they have a different priority to go through, balancing the game, obviously, they're giving us affinities so we can at least have the options. So the affinities that are coming next week's patch is socketables, fragments, breach, expedition, rituals, and charms are now going to be able to go into flasks. And lastly, and probably the biggest quality of life that we're getting next week, is the Atlas bookmarks. We can now add up to 16 bookmarks by clicking on the node of the Atlas map, choosing an icon that we want, and then we're going to be able to type whatever we want. So you can call it whatever you want, right? So all of these labels will appear in the outside screen of the whole atlas, and we can scroll through them so we can see what we have labeled, and if we click one, it's going to immediately take us there. Beautiful. And also these bookmarks are going to be in the legend on the top left for easier access. So these are all the changes coming next week, at least what we know of right now. But yeah, how do you feel about everything that's happening with all the buffs coming in and how the game is going and their mentality as well? Let me know in the comments down below. I really hope that you enjoyed this. I tried to simplify it and make it as quick as possible. If you enjoyed this video, of course, make sure that you like it and subscribe to the channel. I have a lot of leveling and endgame guides coming out as well that you don't want to miss. And as always, thank you very much for watching, you guys. I'm going to see you on the next one. Peace.